You're listening to Cornerstone West Los Angeles.
If we haven't met, my name is Scott, one of the pastors here at Cornerstone as well, and today we are continuing our walk through the Gospel of Luke. We're in Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 36. I will read the passage and then we'll dive in. This is Luke 6, starting with verse 27. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who abuse you. To one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you. And from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. And as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. If you love those who love you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what benefit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to get back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend expecting nothing in return. And your reward will be great. You will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful. This is the word of the Lord. All right, so we pick up today in the middle of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So this is it's his comprehensive announcement of the nature of his kingdom, right? He's explaining to his disciples, to those that are listening, what the nature of his kingdom is like. And last week we saw that Jesus' kingdom, in many ways, functions upside down from the way our world functions, right? Brian was talking about, or was explaining how Jesus taught, blessed are the poor, and blessed are those who are hungry, and blessed are those who weep, and blessed are you when people hate you and exclude you and revile you. Maybe it'd be better actually to say that our world and our city are upside down from the kingdom of God, the core of reality. They're upside down from the way the world actually is. Because it's not Jesus who comes and says, and flips things upside down. It's Jesus who exposes that the way we function is upside down. Right? We function as though riches are the source of blessedness. We function as though being filled is the source of blessedness. We function as though giddiness and happiness are the source of blessedness. We function as though being liked and accepted is the source of blessedness. But anyone who's been rich or filled or happy or accepted can tell you that these are nice things, they're beautiful things, they can be enjoyable things, but none of them ultimately fulfill. Right? None of them bring true flourishing to the human soul. Right? They're beautiful, they're good, but they can't satisfy the soul. And God's economy exposes that the ways we function, the things we look to satisfy ourselves are upside down from reality. We're functioning in this upside down world. But he shows us not just that his economy is upside down, but that so are his ethics, so is the way of living in this world. Right? We were all born into this world. Our natural way of functioning is upside down from the core of reality. At the end of his classic work, Orthodoxy, G.K. Chesterton writes this about being born upside down. He says this, quote, all the real argument about religion turns on the question of whether a man who was born upside down can tell when he comes right way up. The primary paradox of Christianity is that the ordinary condition of man is not his sane or sensible condition. That the normal itself is abnormality. That is the inmost philosophy of the fall, end quote. So the point Chesterton is making here mirrors what Jesus is teaching. He's saying contrary to our beliefs, contrary to our firmly held opinions, the ordinary condition of humans is neither sensible or sane. That by our very nature, we see the world incorrectly. We see the world and we experience the world upside down. But Chesterton and Jesus before him expose our naivete by revealing that our normal condition is in fact abnormality, which is why our enlightened minds and our scientific studies and our political philosophies and our technological advances have not fundamentally solved the problems of war and prejudice and selfishness and broken relationships and mental health even. The more enlightened we become, the seemingly deeper the problems in our soul get magnified. In our upside down world, it's actually the pursuit of riches and happiness and acceptance that end up producing a world filled with anger and division and wars and injustice and manipulation. And in fact, the more we have these technological advances, the more really our real hearts get displayed. You see it when you read the news, you see it in your workplace, you see it when you drive down the 405, right? All the technological advances in an automobile and in the freeway system has not made us any kinder to one another. In fact, you act towards someone you drive past very differently than you act towards somebody that you're just walking past. It provides a freedom for the real you to come out. It's not solving our problems in many ways, it's just exposing them. But in Jesus' right side up kingdom, he says if you're to understand reality, the way it truly is, blessed are the poor and those who weep. And his kingdom doesn't only produce a different way of seeing things, his kingdom produces a completely different ethic, a completely different way of living. As Chesterton wrote, all the real argument about religion turns on the question of whether a man who was born upside down can tell when he comes right way up. Because in a world where we can't see things accurately, and where all the advances of the Enlightenment have not solved our problems, it does cause us to ask the question, well, then how do I know what is right side up? How do I know what is reality? If I can't understand reality simply by getting more information, then how will I ever know what is true? And Jesus answers, we understand the world right side up when our heart and life is filled with love. And not just the cheap substitute this upside down world calls love, right? Not like I love the Dodgers or I love, the ways that our world talks about love, but the genuine article, true, bona fide, Christ-like love. And in this passage, Jesus helps us to understand the nature of this kind of genuine love by showing us the source of genuine love, by showing us the heart of genuine love, and thirdly, the practice of genuine love. So we're going to look at the source of genuine love, the heart of genuine love, and the practice of it. We're actually going to look at the passage backwards, kind of bottom to top. Part of this is because it ends with the source. Jesus ends his argument with the source of genuine love, but I think we need to start there in order to fill our minds with it, or the rest of it won't make any sense. So we're going to start with the source of genuine love. So at the beginning, both at the beginning and the end of this passage is kind of a bookended with this exhortation to love your enemies. It's one of the most famous things Jesus has ever said, and one of the most radical. And whether you're a Christian or not, you probably are familiar. You're like, I don't know much about Jesus, but I know he said love your enemies. And on the surface, it sounds really good, right? I mean, it sounds beautiful. Who wouldn't want to live in a world like that, where we love our enemies, where we do good to those who hurt us, where we are just kind, right? Everyone wants to live in a world like that. And it works really well as a slogan or a bumper sticker, and everybody cheers. I mean, you get in front of a loud group of people, a large group of people, and you can say, we should love our enemies. Everybody's like, yes, that's what we should do, until you have an actual enemy. Right? Like it's great in concept, But in reality, everybody's like, well, no, I mean, we're not actually going to do that though, right? Like we can't love our enemy. I mean, well, yeah, we should love lots of people except our enemies, right? See, no matter what circle you run in, there's an almost universal agreement that our enemies, right, whoever it is out there that is against us, they're the one people, or the one group of people that don't deserve our love, right? That don't live accepting the rules that we've all agreed to. And so they end up outside of our love. This flows out of this ingrained sense in all of us of justice. We function, our natural functioning way of functioning is to function with a justice mentality. We long for justice, and so we fight for justice. And there's something deep within us that demands justice for wrongs done. Right? When we see a wrong committed, we want to make it right. When injustice happens to someone or happens to us, we want someone to be held accountable. And this demand for justice, it's written on our hearts, right? It's not a fundamentally bad thing. It's a part of being human. Because we were created in God's image, and God himself is perfectly just. In fact, he's the very definition of just. The problem becomes, though, when we demand justice, when we long to live in a world that is just, where people get what they deserve, where accountability is held, we quickly come to realize that if the world is just, we're in trouble. This past weekend, we celebrated the 4th of July, right? Independence Day. It was a complicated celebration, I think, for many of us, even in our church, particularly as members of our church family are detained and their freedom taken away from them, we think, in many ways, unjustly. 4th of July, though, Independence Day has always been a complicated celebration. It's always been aspirational as a country. It's been like, this is what we want to become more and more, but it's always been complicated by reality. But in order to kind of navigate that, one of the things that we've done over the years, that I've done over the years, is to read through the Declaration of Independence, to remember kind of what it is, whether the idea, the concept that was worth so much to so many throughout the history of our country. And you're probably all familiar with the beautiful beginning of the Declaration, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. Right? The first part is really well known. The middle part is less well known. It's just a list of, it's kind of boring, but it's just a list of all the things the king's done that they have problems with. But then at the end of the Declaration of Independence is where the meat is. It's where the consequential words are. Towards the end, the Declaration of Independence writes this. It says, or reads this way. It says, "We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, do solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved." Them's fighting words. Right? They declared their independence from the political entity that had established authority over them. They said, up to this point, you have had authority over us, but at this point, we now reject your authority. We now refuse to function under your authority. We do not recognize any longer your authority over us. And in so doing, in declaring their independence and rejecting that authority, they became enemies of that authority. Right? The authority says, okay, well, if you're going to reject my authority, then you become now my enemies by default. And really, anytime those under authority reject and refuse to recognize the authority over them, whether they do it justly or unjustly, by rejecting the authority over them, they become at enmity with one another. Right? One claiming to have authority and one denying and rejecting that authority. So how much more then is that dynamic true when the authority we have rejected is not a tyrannical earthly government, but the perfectly just, perfectly wise, perfectly powerful, perfectly loving God who created us? See, when we reject God, we're not simply exercising our freedom. When we reject God, we're not just asserting our independence from him. We are rejecting his authority. And in rejecting his authority, we are establishing ourselves as his enemy. We're not just like walking kind of away on our own. There's an enmity that comes when you look at someone who has authority over you and says, I do not recognize that. In fact, I reject it. Now, you might even say, well, I don't reject his authority. I just don't believe he exists. But assuming he's real, then not acknowledging that he exists is a way of rejecting his authority, right? If you're speeding down the freeway and California Highway Patrol pulls along behind you and they put their lights on, you can either accept their authority and pull over, or you can reject their authority and speed on, right? Now, if you were to say, I'm not rejecting your authority, I just don't believe you exist, right? It's the same thing as rejecting their authority, right? There's no distinction there. They're like, no, you're rejecting my authority. By saying I don't exist, you're rejecting the authority. And so whether it's by saying he doesn't exist or by outwardly saying you do exist, but I do not recognize your authority over me, when we reject God's authority, we aren't just kind of neutrally, buddies with him and making our own free decisions. We're establishing ourselves as his enemies. So how does God treat his enemies? What does God do for those who reject him? Maybe a helpful contrast would be to consider how earthly authorities treat their enemies, right? How do earthly authorities treat their enemies? I mean, King George III, he declared war, right? Any countries that are at odds today, what do? They declare war. Political enemies today, they scorn and ridicule and wage political war against them. Personal enemies today, they scorn and ridicule and wage personal war. That's how authorities deal with enemies. That's how they respond to enemies in our upside down kingdom. But in God's right side up kingdom, we see that he treats his enemies very differently. Romans 5, verse 10 says, for if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son, much more now that we are reconciled, shall we be saved by his life. See, in our upside down kingdoms, we fight and we war and we use our powers against one another. But in God's right side up kingdom, he loves us and uses his power for us, not against us. I mean, imagine if the CHP officer who finally pulled you over after you ran, you're like, yeah, you don't exist, and you just kept going until you ran out of gas. And he comes up to the car and says, not only do you deserve a ticket, but you deserve to be arrested. But my son is on a ride along today, so I'm putting the cuffs on him and putting him in the back instead. Right? Or imagine if King George III, instead of declaring war on the colonies, had responded to the Declaration of Independence with a declaration of mercy. What if he'd acknowledged and affirmed the rights of the American colonists? What if he had sacrificed his wealth, the wealth that was supposed to be that had been passed on to him and was supposed to be in his system and in his worldview passed on to his heir? What if he took all the wealth for his heir and said, you know what? Instead, I'm just going to forgive all the debt of the colonies. Whatever you owe me, you don't have, and actually, I'm going to remove all your taxes. Right? No more taxes. I'm going to give you representation. He demonstrated. What if he demonstrated himself to be a merciful and benevolent leader? I mean, it's an interesting mental exercise, right? I mean, history would be very different. But I think we're most likely to say, that's a fairy tale, right? That's not how the world works. There's no human leader, there's no national leader that would respond that way. Because, if you had a list of all the leaders of all the countries in the world today, would any of them respond? No, none of them. You can't even imagine where you're like, well, maybe him. No, there's not one. But God's kingdom is so different. He says that's how things function in an upside-down world. But God's right-side-up kingdom is so completely different. Because unlike all earthly rulers, God is, first of all, perfectly righteous. He is right in all he does, which means rebellion against his authority isn't just an opinion. It's not just a choice. It is rebellion against all that is right and good. He's not only perfectly righteous, he's also perfectly just. He is just in all he does. So that those who would declare themselves his enemies must be treated as enemies of all that is right and good. And justice demands payment. Justice demands punishment for that rebellion. But God is also perfectly merciful. He shows mercy in all he does. So, in the midst of that rebellion, he sent his son to bear the righteous, just punishment we deserve to pay for our rebellion. He sent his son to pay for our sin and flipped everything on its head. As the Apostle John summarizes in 1 John chapter 4, verse 10, he says, "In this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son to be the propitiation, to be the substitute for our sins." God is love, and he showed his love. He showed how fundamentally different he is from me and how we recognize this world works by sending his son to die the death we deserve to pay for our rebellion. He stood in our place that we might be redeemed, that we might be rescued. And right after John, in 1 John 4:10 writes, "And this is love, not that we've loved God, but that he loved us," he says, in verse 11, he goes on to say, "Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another." Or as Jesus puts it here in our passage, "So be merciful, even as your Father is merciful." Look, he says, "He is kind to the ungrateful and the evil, so be merciful, even as your Father has been merciful." And here we get the call of what it looks like to know that love. To truly know that love is to reflect that love in the world. And this is the heart of genuine love. So if God and his love for us is the source of genuine love, that changes us from the inside out, and it changes us and gives us a heart of genuine love. Look at we see this back in verse 32. Because in order to get at the heart of our thoughts and our actions, Jesus sets up a contrast between, I think, what we could call natural love and supernatural love. See, natural love is the kind of love that comes naturally to all humans. But what Jesus points out here is that this is the kind of love that exists all over the world in everyone, whether they know me or not. Everyone shows this kind of love. But Jesus points out that natural love is fundamentally reciprocal love. Right? You love because people love you. You love those who love you. You do good to those who do good to you. And it's this kind of natural love that I'm afraid that our whole world uses to demonstrate our goodness. But it's also, even as Christians, we can slip into using this kind of natural love. We point to this natural love and be like, look, I'm a good and decent person. Right? When I'm invited over to someone's place for dinner, I don't show up empty-handed. Right? I bring them something. When I borrow someone's car, I fill up their gas tank all the way. Right? When my kids grow out of their clothes, I pass them down to other kids. When I volunteer, I always volunteer at my kids' school. I mean, as long as they're attending there, right? I say yes when someone asks me at a coffee shop if I'll watch their stuff for them. right? I pour out my time and my energy for my own children. And all these are good and genuinely loving acts, but they're also fundamentally reciprocal acts. They're the kind of acts of love from which we can reasonably expect to receive some kind of benefit or receive some love like similar love in return. They're essentially all manifestations of what we kind of call basic kindness or common decency. Right? They're how we exist together. But on their own, they don't demonstrate supernatural love. Because they don't require supernatural strength to do. They just require wanting to function well in a society. Christ-like love, supernatural love, is different. See, this natural love, this reciprocal love, flows out of a desire for something other than love. We actually want something other than love, and we're using love to get it. Whether it's a good reputation, or a community of friends, or just a reasonable and enjoyable society, or successful children, we love in order to see and benefit in these ways. We may not say it out loud, but in our hearts, it's these desires ultimately that we're after. But supernatural love is based on the recognition that there is nothing in the universe that exists that is greater than the love of God. That the thing of greatest value in the universe is God himself shown to us through his love. And so, therefore, to know the love of God is to possess the thing of greatest value in the universe. And to know the love of God is to then share the love of God. If we possess the thing of greatest value in the universe and then we share it, we don't even lose it when we share it. As we share it, it reaches its natural conclusion in us. See, oftentimes when we talk about love, even in the church, we talk about love and our need for love and kind of love in us as a cup. Right? You got to fill the cup. We all need our love cups filled. And sometimes we feel a little bit drained, and so we need some affirmation. We need to remember who God is, and we need our cup filled. And we need our cup so filled that it overflows. And once it's filled enough, then it'll overflow, and that's us, loving others. And in a sense, like I get that. I think there's something to that. But I think that actually, I'm afraid that a cup is an incomplete picture of how we relate to God's love. Because a cup leaves us as the ultimate receptacle of love. Like the end of love is to reside in us. And then others get loved when we have a little bit too much. But the real goal is to make sure we have enough. That's not ever how God talks about his love. We aren't like a cup. We're more like an aqueduct. Right? We're an aqueduct through which water just flows. I mean, think like the LA River or Ballona Creek. I was going to talk about a river, but we don't know what rivers look like here. So think of lots of concrete is directing the water. And when an aqueduct is full, it's not because it's stopped the water and filled itself up. When it's full, when you're like, man, that thing is full, it's because there's so much water flowing through it, right? None of the water's staying in it. It's coming in and going out, and coming in and going out, and coming in and going out. And in this ever-flowing tide, it's full when the most is not only coming in, but also going out. And Jesus is pointing out here that the kind of love that flows out of us should be the same kind of love that flows into us, right? We don't have supernatural love flow into us and then common decency trickle out. Right? Supernatural love is flowing into us and we are designed to not be a cup, but to be a conduit through which this love pours in and pours out to others. And this kind of selfless, supernatural love is the kind of love Christ has shown us. And so That's the love. That's the love he's designed to flow out to our family and our friends and the people that invite us over for dinner. And also our neighbors and our coworkers and the people driving next to us on the freeway and the people standing next to us in the grocery line. It's this love is indiscriminate. And it's so indiscriminate. And I think this is Jesus' main point here. He says, this love that pours out of us is so indiscriminate, it even pours onto our enemies. It's not limited. It's not budgeted and withheld. It pours out of us. It pours out of us onto the people in our family. It pours out of us to the people in our city. It pours out of us on everyone. And he uses enemies as almost the most radical version he can think of because it pours onto everyone, even our enemies. Which leads us back to the beginning of this passage and this ethic Jesus describes. It's one characterized by supernatural love that is so profound, it manifests even in the love of our enemies. So we've looked at the source of genuine love and the heart of genuine love, and now we'll see how this passage, really the core of this passage, talks about the practice of genuine love. Because reciprocal love can trick us into believing we're living genuinely loving lives. And while reciprocal love is a part of living a genuinely loving life, right? This isn't a call to love your enemies and be mean to the people next to you, right? Reciprocal love is a part of living a genuinely loving life, but we can't actually demonstrate the genuineness that there is supernatural love flowing through us until we have opportunities to manifest non-reciprocal love. And it's the opportunities for non-reciprocal love that demonstrate that what's in us is different. That the way we see the world and the way we live in the world is upside down from the way the world around us functions. It's the non-reciprocal opportunities that demonstrate the genuineness of our love. And the clearest opportunity for non-reciprocal love is when we're faced with an enemy. Now, enemy is a strong word. I mean, it's actually so strong that we don't use it a lot. Many of you maybe may hear it and think, I mean, that sounds amazing. I'd apply that if I had any enemies, right? Like I don't really have enemies. I don't hate anybody. But the word here is broader than just those who have declared war against you, right? The word here, when he's talking about enemies, it refers to having hostility or being in opposition to one another. So whether it's at work or in your family or in your neighborhood or in your apartment building or in our country, right? Who is it that is opposing you or people like you? Who is it that's hostile toward you or people like you? Or maybe in our passive-aggressive culture, who quietly seethes and schemes against you? See, this isn't just some slogan or bumper sticker. Jesus is trying to lay out an actual practical ethic for following him and living in his kingdom. So I want you to think about an actual person or actual people. Who in this world is hostile toward you? Who's opposed to you? Who are you tempted to be hostile toward? Who are you tempted to be opposed to? Whether it's an individual or a group of people. That is who Jesus is talking about when he says, love your enemies. But what does that even look like, right? What does that practically mean? I mean, if we're to love, this is complicated. You're like, well, I'm supposed to love them, but it's a complicated situation. It's got lots of history. It's got lots of different factors. There's lots of different dynamics involved. But if we're to love like Christ has loved and show mercy the way he's shown mercy, then we go back again to how he has loved us. And how he has loved us. He didn't set aside his righteousness to love us. He didn't even set aside justice to love us. He maintained justice in loving us, but he did show mercy. And he showed mercy at great personal cost. And here, in the very first verse, he gives us really three practical pieces of what showing mercy at great personal cost might entail. For those who hate you and curse you and abuse you, he says, do good to them, bless them, and pray for them. And if you take nothing else away today, here's this threefold ethic you can walk with, the ethic God is calling all of us to when you think about those who are opposed to you, do good to them, bless them, and pray for them. When your boss belittles you or obstructs your career, when your neighbor complains about something you're doing to you or online, on Nextdoor, it's like talking about you on Nextdoor. When your child rejects your authority and decides they know better, when someone cuts you off on the 405 after driving on the shoulder for a mile, then they want to get over. Do good to them. Right? Bless them, pray for them. And in the more serious situations we find ourselves in, right, that might not be the only thing you do. There may be numerous different biblical principles that come to play as you navigate these complex situations. But Christ is showing us that however we respond should begin with and be consistent with this threefold call to do good, to bless, and to pray. Jesus then goes on in verses 29 and 30 to give 4 examples of what it might look like in practice to do good, to bless, and to pray. He says, to one who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also. And from one who takes away your cloak, do not withhold your tunic either. Give to everyone who begs from you, and from one who takes away your goods, do not demand them back. Now, these instructions are easy to misunderstand. I think they've been cherry-picked and thrown all over the place kind of throughout history. But Jesus isn't here providing some kind of new strict law that's to govern all of our interactions regardless of what other biblical principles might apply. He's not saying this is the only thing that matters. That's not what he's saying. This is the only thing you think about. That's not what he's saying. He's providing 4 illustrations, 4 examples of what this ethic might look like in real life. But how this might get flesh. These ideas might get flesh. Right now, he's saying if someone, let's just take a couple of them as an example. If someone, he says, were to strike you on the cheek, and in striking on the cheek, he's talking more about an insult than an assault. Right? He's talking about somebody who insults you or does something insults you or even hits you in an insulting way. He says doing good to them means not retaliating, even if it means you might be disrespected or insulted again. Now, this, however, does not mean that if you're being assaulted or abused, that the godly response is just to lay down and take it. Or if you're in an abusive relationship, to just stay there and the godly response is just to stay there. That is not what he's saying. Removing yourself from a situation, appealing to authorities for protection are appropriate responses as well. Paul did just that when he appealed to his Roman citizenship when he was being beaten. Right? He appealed to the authorities for his own protection. And removing yourself from a situation while you continue to pray for them can be a powerful act of love and doing good to them. But it's talking about an ethic of being willing. Being willing to not take vengeance upon someone, but to calmly take a step back and ask, how can I do good? How can I show mercy? If someone were to take your jacket, he says, if someone takes away your cloak, don't withhold your tunic either. And I mean, most of us are like, I don't have a cloak or a tunic, so I guess I'm good. Right? Maybe you just read this like, if somebody takes your jacket, don't withhold your sweatshirt either, okay? But what he's saying is if somebody takes your jacket, blessing them means being willing to see them as a human and wonder, what do they actually need? Right? Is this person in need of what I can offer, and can I offer more than what you took from me? This does not mean that the godly response is to like strip off all of our, you're like, hey, if a cloak and a tunic are good, then like my undergarments are even better, you know? Like, no, like the goal of this is not for every Christian to end up, naked because they've, they're like, take it, I got a big sign, take it from me. Like obviously that's not what's going on. It's a posture of selflessness that again responds to even being taken advantage of with a heart of compassion that sees the person who's taken advantage of you as a human, that sees them and considers them. If someone steals from you, the pursuit of appropriate justice may lead you to press charges. But in Jesus' right side up kingdom, it might lead you to press charges out of a concern for God and a concern for others. It might lead you to press charges out of a concern for them. That actually what's best for them is to experience the natural consequences of their actions. But that's different than pressing charges out of vengeance because you want to get even. Because if you had to suffer, you want them to suffer more. Do you see the heart's different? And he's picturing us, giving us here pictures of what it might look like to do good to others, to bless them, and to pray for them, to be merciful, even as your Father has been merciful to you. Still, as he closes this all up, I think Jesus recognizes what we recognize, that this is complicated. Right? And when you take these general principles and apply them to specific situations, there's all sorts of different questions that arise, and all sorts of different biblical principles that may apply, and navigating that requires wisdom. So even when in situations where it's so complicated, you're like, do good, like I don't even know what good is in this situation. Like, how do I bless them? What blesses them? Like, what do I pray for when I pray for them? Jesus actually wraps all this up by summing up his ethic as simply as possible in verse 31. It says, and as you wish that others would do to you, do so to them. It says this, when you don't know what else to do, come back to this, right? It's the golden rule. But this is why, again, the golden rule works on a bumper sticker, but people don't actually want to live that way, because the only reason to live that way is if we have received God's mercy poured into us through God and his Son. And it's the moments when we find it hard to know exactly what it looks like to do good to others and bless them and pray for them that he tells us, as you wish that others would do for you, do so to them. And all of a sudden you see that this can get traction in all sorts of different situations. When you go over to someone's house for dinner, do for them as you would want them to do for you. When you borrow someone's car, do so for them as you would want them to do for you. And also, when your boss is having a bad day, when your boss is having a bad year and berates you, do for them as you would want them to do for you. When someone cuts you off and flips you off on the 405, do for them as you'd want them to do for you. When someone treats you in ways that are unjust, do for them as you'd want them to do for you. Not because you're expecting them to do the same for you. That's reciprocal love. And this is actually how I think most people in our culture will take the golden rule and turn it into reciprocal love. Do for others as you would want them to do for you. Do for others so that they'll do the same thing for you. No, I mean, actually, when we get frustrated because other people don't reciprocate our love, it just shows how deeply ingrained reciprocal love is in our accounting. No, Christ is calling us to love this way, not so others will reciprocally return our love. He's calling us to love this way because it's how he loved us. Because he has been so overwhelmingly merciful to us. And as that love and that grace and that mercy has poured into us, it can pour out of us to all those around us, even to our enemies. Let's pray. Lord God, we do praise you for your grace and kindness in so many ways. We thank you for the ways that you have that you continue to pour your mercy upon us even today. Would you this day, this week, show us the countless opportunities we have to love others the way you have loved us? May we become more like you as we pursue that and as we do. In Christ's name, amen.
Thank you for listening to Cornerstone West Los Angeles. For more information, please visit us on the web at cornerstonewla.org.